Alex Magesa advised the presidential campaign of Nelson Chamisa. He previously was chief of staff to the former Zimbabwean Prime Minister, Morgan Tsvangirai. Alex Magesa, thank you very much for being here. What's your reaction to what's happened in your country?
Well, it's incredibly sad that events have come to this situation. We have seen people being killed. We are also seeing an escalation of violence and use of excessive force by the state. We would have hoped that the election would go peacefully, as it had, and that it would be concluded in peace.
Did your candidate, Mr. Chamisa, go into this process thinking that this election was going to be carried out in a fair and democratic manner?
He understood that the system was rigged. He understood that there was institutional bias on the part of the election referee. But it was important to contest because we understood that boycotting elections doesn't really work. And it was important to show up the system, and it has been shown up.
And in what way? I mean, you say it ended up that this was not a fair election. In what way was it not? Because there were international observers there who said, yes, there were some problems, but overall, I think the consensus was they found it fair.
Well, I think that they found that the election was peaceful, at least up to election day, but they haven't really pronounced on the freeness and fairness of that election or the credibility of it. Indeed, what they said on Tuesday was that they were waiting for the conclusion of the counting process. And the counting process has not gone very well. There have been delays, there's been a lot of problems in terms of transparency and fairness, but there were many issues. We're looking at the process here. The voters' roll was not released on time, the printing of the ballot papers, design of ballot papers, and so many issues that demonstrated that the referee was not fair. Mr. Chamisa would have withdrawn from that election, but he decided that it's important to give the people of Zimbabwe an opportunity to choose their next leader. And he has done incredibly well. There's no opposition leader who has ever garnered 2 million votes in an election. And he has done that. And we believe that he did enough to win the presidency. And that's what the people believe.
What gives you that confidence? I mean, how do you know how does he know that he had enough votes to win?
They have information that they have been collecting during the electoral process. They have been comparing the figures that they have on the ground and the figures that have been given by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. Some of the figures are not tallying up, some of the figures are not adding up. And what he is trying to do is to pursue all the legal and constitutional mechanisms that are available using peaceful means. And there is no room for violence in this process.
Do you believe that Mr. Mnangagwa, that his new administration, I mean, they've declared victory. Are they going to allow this challenge to go forward?
Well, they don't have a choice. It has to be done. Of course, there are challenges with the judicial process. It may be that the judiciary will not give it the fair hearing that we hope it would. There have been other cases in the past where there have been challenges, but we hope that there will be enough evidence that will convince them, or at least they will be able to look at the evidence fairly and be able to conclude the matter. What Zimbabwe needs is a conclusion of this process that gives legitimacy to whoever governs it after now.
What do you say, Mr. Magesa, to those who look at the opposition candidates who ran and say what they did was they divided the anti-Mnangagwa vote? In other words, that the opposition was split, and that weakened their performance in the election.
Yes, it's an argument that has been put forward, but I think it's an argument that lacks nuance. The Zimbabwean elections are harmonized in that there are 3 elections: the council, the parliamentary, and the presidential. Yes, for the presidential election, you can see that there were only 2 candidates who were running. It was Mr. Mnangagwa and Mr. Chamisa. And indeed, there are areas where Mr. Mnangagwa's party won in the parliamentary election, but Mr. Chamisa was able to get the popular vote. So there was a split ticket.
So you're saying it wasn't really divided, the opposition?
Not for the presidential election. It would have been divided for the parliamentary candidates. That's understandable, and that's regrettable. But for the presidential election, that issue does not arise.
How at this point does Mr. Chamisa go about his challenge? What is he going to do?
He has to approach the Constitutional Court. The Constitution of Zimbabwe provides for a mechanism within the next 7 days. He has to launch his petition through the Constitutional Court, which will then hear the matter and make a decision on the issue. That is one mechanism that he has available to him. But as I said, the Constitution guarantees a number of fundamental freedoms and rights that can be exercised in order to ensure that the will of the people is accepted.
What are the consequences for Zimbabwe if Mr. Mnangagwa is declared the victor and this challenge from Mr. Chamisa doesn't bear fruit?
Well, we would hope that he would carry out a mandate that would assist Zimbabwe to have a brighter future. But we have serious challenges because Mr. Mnangagwa and a lot of people around him are part of the old administration. And the challenge that Zimbabwe needs right now is a fresh start.
Administration.
That is right, exactly. And so many people, especially on the opposition side, wonder whether there's going to be any difference at all. And the signs that we have seen in the last 2 days with the military being deployed in these urban areas, and we also hear in the rural areas using excessive force. This is what we used to see during the era of Mr. Mugabe, and it's almost like deja vu for a lot of people, and that's a bit scary.
Excuse me, Mr. Mnangagwa is saying that they are going to investigate the violence that took place.
He has spoken very well, and he has spoken very well in the past. Sometimes the words do not match the actions, and what is important is that what he has said, it has to be fulfilled, it has to be complemented by actual action, and we hope that it will be done.
Will this be decided purely by internal decision-making inside Zimbabwe? Are there any outside forces, whether on the continent of Africa or anywhere else, that do you believe can have a good effect on the government of Mr. Mnangagwa to persuade them to make sure that this process goes fairly from now on?
Oh, absolutely. I think that Zimbabwe has been a troublesome child for Southern African region for the past 20 years. And for a time, we were actually under the curatorship of the Southern African Development Community, which is the regional organization. I think that the international community has an important role to play to influence Zimbabwe to go on a proper and smoother path. And we hope that will happen.
Alex Magaisa, who advised the campaign of Nelson Chamisa. We thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.